Okay, welcome to the Bee Formless podcast, where we explore life, leadership, and business in a VUCA world. And I'm wanting to introduce you today to Jess. I've got two surnames for you. Is it Jess Cullen or is it Jess Kupfer? Because you've got Jess Kupfer, but then I've noticed you've got Jess Cullen as well.
Yes. Jess Kipfer was my older surname. I got married in 2022, and I just decided, firstly, kudos for saying my maiden name correctly because most people couldn't. And I decided, it's a lot of fun to have a surname that people can actually pronounce. So I went with Cullen because I'm of the vintage where people see that and think of Twilight, so they instantly know, okay, I know how to say Jessica Cullen. So
I
yeah,
love
it's
that. I love
Jessica
that.
Cullen.
And I hope you don't mind. I've just jumped straight into Jess versus Jessica. I'm a Belinda, but I like being called B, so I hope you don't mind me calling you Jess as well.
I love Jess. All my friends call me that. So go right ahead.
Great. Well, Jess, I'm pleased to have you on board today because I'm really thrilled to talk about your vast, I guess, career and life journey in terms of, yeah, your trajectory from, back when you were starting out to where you are now. And it's quite amazing to look at everything in terms of, from your career through to your athletics and your peak performance. And there's so much here that I'm keen to unpack with you. But let's start with where you're at right now. So you're the CEO in residence at and managing partner at Regenerative Capital Group. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, I've been there for about a year, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life.
And in terms of rewarding, why rewarding one of the most rewarding experiences you've had so far?
Well, it was a big leap from what I had done before, and I did truly love what I did before. But I would say what I do here it feels a little bit more like a calling. It's like purpose alignment because really what they do is they say, you look at companies like living systems. We've treated them like machines. We've treated people like machines, and they're saying, what would happen if you would take businesses that are sort of like the backbone of an economy and treat them and all the things around it like this living, breathing system. So we have this incredible opportunity to have regenerative leadership training and to be able to take that and apply that to business. So then ultimately, I'm going to acquire a company, run it, and do it with regenerative principles and life-centric principles. Because we're a big believer, it's you don't, make a whole heap of money and then go do good with it. You make profit while doing the right thing. So and just saying, it's an invitation, like how we can build out these really great profitable companies, but also we want imitators because I think when you look at what's happening in the world, like there's a poly crisis.
Yeah.
And the only way that we can solve that is by changing the way that we do business. So we're trying to be among the first to go ahead and do this, but we want people to follow us. I'm an eldest child, so the idea of being able to carve the way is
I
nothing new for
love,
me, and it's exciting and energizing. So
yeah.
for me, I just, when there's so many things that we're doing where we look to the right and the left and realize this hasn't been done before and say, okay, well, we'll create the model and we'll iterate as we go.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Yeah, I love that because it feels like it. I mean, everything you're talking about here, we're living in that VUCA world full of, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And what a great time to be actually being at the frontier in terms of that regenerative leadership and everything you're talking about. And I don't know about you, but more and more I'm noticing in businesses that there is just this need to be operating from a place of purpose. And, profit plays a big part, of course. But, I think you talk about impact, purpose, profit comes into it. Yeah, it's meaningful impact, growth, purpose, and profit. And I
Mhm.
love that so much because the fact that you're talking about making meaningful impact, but with purpose, that's what actually creates that growth and profit. Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. I think that, things are meant to be in balance. And I think that the more that we can restore that and create capacity for, just vitality or life, just the way that things have been, doing, like help businesses evolve and you're helping them operate in a way that is a higher level than they've experienced before. Of course, you're going to see profits. So it's very exciting.
Yeah. So let's take a step back because previously you were in retail through one of the biggest retail chains in Canada, national, from national perspective, home hardware. Have I got that right? It's home hardware, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of like interesting your pivot from, kind of retail and then moving into where you are now. What
Mhm.
what's the biggest difference you've noticed coming from that background to now where you are?
Ooh, that's a really good question, and no one has asked me that before. Um, it's actually a little bit difficult to answer because there's so many differences. But I think one of the similarities is that I was able to build in both places. I would say I would say one of the biggest changes for me, and it dovetails into what I was just talking about earlier, is, at a large established 60 plus year company. There's all the systems and processes are
Yeah.
in place. It operates like a machine, like just let's move forward, let's grow, let's do it in this way. And I would say what I'm doing with Regenerative Capital Group, like I said, it's newer. We're
Yeah.
building. It's a little bit more agile and dynamic in that way,
Yeah.
just by nature of we need to think a little bit differently. We need to iterate things. We don't have the luxury of um, going back on similar processes. We're building rather than following pre-existing processes. I think
Yeah.
that might be the biggest change. Yeah, and I guess maybe that's the difference between something like a capital group and corporate. Like it's
Yeah,
it's
totally.
big.
But here's the thing that's going on for me, right, that I think about time and time again, and it's almost like, where you're at now, you have that ability to iterate. You're in like this non-linear world, like, it's the new frontier. That's the exciting, that's the fun part. But I also think there's this huge opportunity. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this in terms of some of the more established systems that we're talking about here, especially in corporates. And how do we break them down? How do we get them to crack into a new system? And when you talk about this regenerative piece, I think there's a huge opportunity, but yet there almost for me feels like, and what I observe is somewhat a block of wanting to change the status quo because the system has been there for so long and ingrained in everything, and to then undo it, almost
Mhm.
disconnect it to then reconnect it, is a challenge. What's your thoughts on that, and knowing where you've come from as well?
I think that's a really important question. And it's also, I don't want to make it sound like it's all doom and gloom for our corporate companies. In fact, I will be the first to say, I feel like, at least in the past little while, that entrepreneurship has been glorified.
Yeah.
The whole idea of that if you're in corporate, you're not dreaming big enough.
Yeah.
That is sort of out in the zeitgeist. And I think that it's so incorrect because I think that, you know, I truly, up until I found this opportunity, I loved what I was doing. I felt that I was very fulfilled. I was contributing to something, larger than myself. For your listeners who haven't heard of Home Hardware Stores Limited, it operates like a co-op.
Yeah.
It supports individual entrepreneurs. Like there's this really beautiful business model, a part of it. But one thing that I always went back to, and was to answer your question of like, how do you solve this problem of these big
Yeah.
giant companies that are big ships to churn? One of my favorite books, and I forget the author, but it's called This Might Get Me Fired. And it said Your Manual for
Heard of
Thriving in
it.
the Corporate Underground. And essentially, what it does is it brings up this ideal of being an intrapreneur. So you can bring all the ideas of being an entrepreneur into a larger organization and be an intrapreneur and, build out and operate with these fresh ideas. And it teaches you this formula of taking that forward, selling those ideas, and bringing all of this fresh, new innovation to light. So I think it's absolutely possible. And not only that, we need people who are entrepreneurial to operate in corporate so that we have that idea. So
Yeah.
I think that there's an incredible space for people who think like an entrepreneur within a larger corporation.
Yeah, I totally love that. I love the whole entrepreneur analogy as well, because that is where you can make the change and make the difference. Talk to me about teams and the importance of having a high performing team and having people that are similar in terms of the way they think innovatively, but also your background also talked around strategic but also operational. When it comes to, we have all these visions, right, and be super visionary, but we also need the team to ensure we implement it. What's your, I guess, what's your kind of the way you create a team and bring a team together to get done what you need to get done?
Yeah, there's so much that can be said about that because like people are everything, right? Like they are what helps create that culture. They're what drives that living system forward. It's like all of those different pieces. I think, as a leader, first and foremost, you need to really understand what each person brings to the team and have a full understanding of where they land. I'm a big believer in A players only because the second that you hire like I love this phrase and I'll never forget it. It's A players hire A players. The moment that you hire a B player, they hire C players.
Oh,
So
I
you
love
hire
that.
one player and they bring down your entire team. So it's focusing on when I look at building out a team, there's a couple things that I think A players, which is very common, but I look for people who come with batteries included. I don't need to motivate you. You come with that fire in your belly, and all I need to do is align you with that sense of purpose and, vision, and we're going to come alongside. I'm going to look at where are all your unique skill sets that you have today that you can offer this team? Where's this capacity that you don't even see in yourself? How can I unlock that and have this all work together as a team?
I
I
love
just
that.
think, yeah, once you have A players though, I think like that's the number one rule is people who are passionate, hungry, and aligned with your greater purpose. And I think you can change the world.
I think you can too. And I think quite often, a lot of the times we accept the B grade players when we know that we need to move those B grade players on and actually just stick out the A grade players. And I think that's kind of, I'm a big fan. I don't believe in mediocrity. And so for me, it's always ensuring that you have that kind of high performing team. In terms of you've got this great I guess, energy about you, right? So how do you ensure that your battery is always full? And the reason I'm asking this is because I'm a high performer as well, but I notice at times that I can dip down. And I had a moment yesterday where I'd come off the back of a weekend. I want to talk to you about Iron Women and all your athletics. And it was just a big weekend. And I woke up yesterday morning and I was like, I am exhausted. My battery is running on empty. And so I jumped quickly into some active recovery at lunchtime because I was like, I've got so much to do yesterday afternoon. What do you do to ensure that your battery stays full, and when do you notice when it isn't? And knowing when you need to, have that recovery so that you're the best leader you can possibly be, but you're also a great leader for your team and you're showing them a way that is purposeful and leading from, I guess, integrity, but also not just push, 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 because that A level can sometimes feel like you're constantly up there and no time for resting.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly make a comment on that because it's so important that you've brought that up is that, the team will always move at the speed of the leader. And it is your responsibility to have a strong sense of where people are at, like with their energy. They're going to try to keep up with you. And I always say, if your team burns out as a leader, that's on you. So it's like energy. I spent a lot of time thinking about energy, actually.
Yeah.
And why I love this question is because so often people say that, time is the greatest resource. And I actually disagree with that. I think energy is the
Okay.
greatest resource
Mm.
because you can have all the time in the world, but if you don't have that vitality to be able to, expand and live your like health and breadth of all of that, I don't want to have time where I'm not showing up as my best self.
Yeah.
So with that, because that is something that is like core value of mine, it's a non-negotiable. So I will, no matter how busy I am, I will always get, exercise. I've worked with coaches in the past where the way that they said it is, find your base camp.
Yeah.
What do you need to do to center yourself, to get yourself to coming from your best place the most like thriving,
Yeah.
energy giving, life giving. And to your point, there's going to be times where you just simply don't have that energy. And I think you sound a lot like me. There's going to be days where sometimes I almost beat myself up because I'm like, "Ah, I'm not coming with the energy that I want."
Yeah.
Part of managing your energy is just accepting that you're not going to be like that every single day
Mm.
and constantly adjusting to go with that. It goes back to what we're talking about with like regenerative business is that you're treating yourself like a machine when you keep layering on like coffee and
Yeah.
like more meetings and just go, 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 and understanding you are a living, breathing being that has all like different needs, all the people around you do, and show up in that way, but find ways to recalibrate so you have the best energy. For me, very specifically, that's exercise, that's eating healthy, it's drinking enough water, it's, meditating, it's yoga,
Sleep.
it's all the things that I sleep. Yes, that's another thing, non-negotiable for me. I'm a person, I sleep 8 hours a night, like
Yeah.
no question.
I
And
get 7 and 8 now. I used to be on 4, believe it or not. Like it was crazy back in the day. In my crazy days, I was, but yeah, I'm like you, 7 to 8 now. It's a non-negotiable. Anything lower than 7 is just like no.
yeah. But it's funny because sleep is one of those like it's very nefarious once you start not getting enough sleep. I read Why We Sleep by is it Matthew Walker? I think so. It's a great book if you haven't read it.
I
But
haven't read it.
I mean, you don't understand how you are showing up when you aren't sleeping enough. Like you think you're performing to your top capacity, but you're really not.
No.
So like you're spot on, B. Like sleep is
Yeah.
key.
All right, so I'm going to have a quick pivot. Talk to me about this. You've got this hugely successful career in athletics. Well, it's sport, I should say, not just athletics, sport. And this Iron Woman. You won. I can't remember if it was it some massive event over in Canada that you won an Iron Woman. Um,
Yeah, Iron Man Canada.
Iron Man
Yeah.
Canada. I keep saying Iron Woman because I like Iron Man. There's no representation of Iron Woman. And I'm like, can we just say Iron Woman slash or Iron Man slash Iron Woman? And I noticed that when I was up on the Gold Coast over the weekend as well.
Yeah.
And I am fascinated because obviously from a high performer perspective, you're at the top of the game in your career, but then you've also managed to have this, top of the game in terms of this Iron Woman sport. And watching it over the weekend, I observed that it's not just about actually doing the sport. It's actually about the strategy and being super strategic in terms of like the waves and following the water and all the different, events you need to do. And I really noticed that I'd never noticed before. So talk to me a little bit about, yeah, that whole Iron Woman experience and what it means for you. And yeah.
Well, I could talk to you all day about that. I think, firstly, how I balance it. I think one really realistic way is that my husband's my coach. So he started coaching me after we got married, but it's been wonderful to balance out, yes, career and training, but that's also then layered on with spending time with my friends and my husband. And so all the things, rather than taking things away, I found a way to blend it. And so then it's a really, I love going for long bike rides with my husband and exploring new places on a run when we're traveling. And it's just a way to seamlessly, blend all of these different things together. And then because I do that, then I have energy in my work. Like it all starts working together. But I would say in terms of the strategy, I love Ironman, and it can be in sport in general, but I really think that sports are essential for teaching you how to play out all of the things that are going to happen in life.
Yeah.
Really safe environment. Like I think number one, like sometimes you're going to lose. Most times you're going to lose. So learning how to do that with, grace and dignity and cheering for people who win, that's so important. And
Yeah.
some people don't learn that as adults. So it's so healthy to be able to do that and to push your limits past what you thought were possible. Understanding that it's a mental game. It might be hard now, but I mean, just give it 30 minutes. An Ironman's a pretty long event.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my gosh. I don't
yeah.
know how. I don't know how. I love sport and I'm super fit, but I'm like, I'm not sure I can do that.
Well, I mentioned earlier the meditation part, and for me, the best races of my life. So the day of Ironman Canada, I can't describe it in any other way other than from before the moment that the gun went off, I was in flow state. I
Yeah.
remember like I came to that race, I was perfectly calm. I stood at the edge of the water and I just looked out and I had this feeling in my body and I was like, today's going to be a great day. And that it didn't mean that things weren't wrong, but it was just one of those things that everything just sort of flowed. And it's one of those perfect days that you chase your entire career. And I have so much gratitude that I got it, because I've won a few other races, but they weren't the same feeling.
No.
Because I joke, you can sometimes win ugly, where I was like, oh, my strategy and tactics weren't perfect, but I just got lucky. Whereas that day, I really felt like I embodied it. It was just one of those like flow state moments, and that's a long time because that's almost 10 hours of flow state, but
Yeah.
it was pretty cool.
I love that. And it's like you've had that flowy day. And when you get into that flow state, you have to just embrace it, right? And it's just like nothing, you talked about time earlier. Time doesn't even exist in those flow states. So, like a 10-hour race, you probably got to the end of it and didn't even feel like 10 hours. It
Oh,
felt like you're probably just there and it was like, oh, it's over now. Like, it's like, that's what I love about flow state.
yes. And you're totally in the moment too, because I sometimes find I've had in November I did Ironman Cozumel and I was just trying to disassociate because I was in pain. Whereas that day I was just fully in the moment and even on the run, like just the crowd was so supportive. I was tearing up. Like it was such a special day and it was like being very present. And it takes a lot of practice to be able to do that. And as you hinted earlier, there's so many takeaways from doing Ironmans or even, I mean, triathlon and
Yeah.
sport of any level and how that can translate over into business and just so many other areas of life.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And so what would you, in terms of what advice would you give to, someone starting out in their career in terms of, wanting to be the best they possibly can be? What sort of advice would you give them?
So it's funny. I will give them the advice that there was a career advisor at my university. So I went through and I was going to be a teacher. And as I graduated, I realized I actually was like, oh, I should probably practice this and see if I like to do it. So that's maybe advice number one. Before you say you want to do something, find ways that you can practice in a smaller scale. Make sure that it's what you want. I learned very quickly I didn't want that. But then I was totally at a loss. I was about to graduate and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I went to a career advisor and she gave me the comment. She's like, have you ever heard of a theory called the chaos theory? And I was
Oh,
like,
I
no.
love the chaos
And
theory.
she's like, it means that you're going to have the best intentions for your life. But that also means that there's going to be things that come out of left field and just smack you over the side of the head. And many people ignore those opportunities because they're not the direction that you're heading. She's like, my advice to you is to grab a hold of those opportunities and go with them because that's going to be your career. And that has been true over and over and over again I think you need to put yourself in a situation where you have a plan and you have a direction, but be prepared and open to being surprised and delighted by life. And that might take you in a completely different direction because that's where you find those opportunities that other people aren't looking at, where there's the rare air and where you're going to carve out the best possible career for yourself.
I love that. And that's my whole formless analogy, right? You go from that fixed form into kind of almost like shapeless, like water, and then it depends on where you go. And I'm also a
Yeah.
massive believer in organized chaos because, we're living in this chaotic world. You can organize
Mhm.
yourself around it, but it may not be necessarily where you thought you were going. And so, like you say, embrace it. I love those takeaways. We're nearly up time to wrap up, but I also wanted to find out where can everyone find out more about you? Because I think you're also a blogger. Is that right? That you've got your own, is it laces and
Oh, you really did your research.
yeah,
That
I
was
did.
a long time ago. I always playing around with different projects. So that was I was a blogger for maybe 10 years. So long, long time. That's no longer active, but
Okay,
if people want to go back to the archives, it's
that's
lacesandlattes.com.
that's
You
right.
can find me on Instagram. I share things from business and sport and just some things that I'm exploring in life. And my handle is It's Jessica Cullen
Okay,
on
great.
Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jess. I really enjoyed talking to you today and lots of key takeaways. So thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you and to be on the podcast.
Thanks, Jess.